Essex police have set up a major crime gold group. These are usually reserved for major incidents like terror attacks. What's the heinous crime we should all be terrified of? Well, apparently a year ago, journalist Allison Pearson tweeted something that someone didn't like, so they reported it to the police, the little snitch. A tweet that's a year old! Is it safe to go outside yet? Allison was visited by police on a Sunday morning. She opened the door in her dressing gown and slippers to be told that she'd been accused of a non-crime hate incident over something she tweeted that was perceived as stirring up racial hatred, but the police wouldn't tell her which tweet was the offending one, so she didn't know which one to take down. It could have still been visible to the public, stirring up racial hatred in anyone who glanced upon it. And when she asked who the accuser was, the police told her, it's not the accuser, they're the victim. Oh, can we scramble an air ambulance for this person who had to look at a tweet? Does somebody need their boo-boo kissed better? And it's kind of revealing that the police had already decided that a crime had been committed, as you can't declare somebody to be a victim without a crime. Although this is a non-crime hate incident, apparently. A non-crime. What are the police doing getting involved in non-crimes? You don't see the health service getting involved in non-health stuff, or the Coast Guard doing wedding planning. Isn't there enough crime for the police to deal with? Well, yes, there is. This is Essex Police, where crime has been rising. This chart shows the rise in violent crime by year, and Essex Police have a woeful record in dealing with it, solving just 2.5% of vehicle offences and just over 6% of burglaries. But Britain's police aren't a crime-fighting force anymore. They're an opinion enforcement squad, ensuring that no British citizens criticise state-mandated ideologies around gender, race, mass immigration, Islam, or any of the other areas of contention in the UK right now. Hundreds of thousands of these non-crime hate incidents have been issued to tyrannise British citizens into silence. Allison has been accused of racism, not the acceptable kind, such as when academics and politicians say they want to abolish whiteness. It's the bad kind of racism against Muslims, who are now a race apparently. The Guardian claims that the offending tweet referred to a picture of Muslims holding a flag as Jew haters, which is racist because of course the Muslim world famously loves Jews. If you don't believe me, just look at the last 1400 years in the Middle East, or what happened on October the 7th last year when the Islamist group Hamas loved Jews so much they sent thousands of Muslim men into Israel to give everyone a cuddle. But look a bit closer, the flag held by the men in the photo looks like it represents the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf political party, whose founder Imran Khan described Osama bin Laden as a martyr, and whose foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Jews have deep pockets and control the media. So it's not really the flag of Jew lovers. It's possible that the men holding the flag could sue Allison for defamation if they represent a hitherto unknown radical pro-Jewish wing of this political party, but I can't see how this could possibly be a criminal matter for the police. It's also interesting to see what Essex Police don't consider to be a hate crime. While preaching at Hampton Sports and Leisure Centre in Chelmsford last year, Sheikh Shams ad-Duda Muhammad called for the destruction of people who support the existence of Israel. He said in Arabic, "O Allah, destroy the Zionists who fight your allies and obstruct your path. O Allah, seize them with a mighty and powerful grip. O Lord of the worlds, and unleash upon them your punishment that cannot be repelled by the criminal people." I mean, I'd have gone with God bless this meal, but I guess everyone's different. When the footage was shown to Essex Police, they said his preaching was protected under the right to freedom of religion under the Human Rights Act. So according to the police, calling someone a Jew hater is racist incitement, but calling for mass murder, well, that's a religious belief, so that's okay. And while Allison is threatened with 7 years in jail for describing people waving an anti-Semitic flag as Jew haters, the government funds mosques which hand out the Quran, which contains lines such as "kill the unbelievers," which unfortunately isn't a conceptual notion, it happens quite a lot. So you'd think maybe at least the government would stop funding the distribution of a religious text calling for it to happen, but no. This is obviously two-tier policing, but we're used to that by now. What we're also getting used to now is the state tyrannising nice, educated, middle-class citizens. While this situation is ludicrous and will probably not lead to Allison being jailed, it's worth remembering how terrifying and intimidatory a knock on the door from the police can be. Never mind the arrest, the booking in at the police station, interrogation and criminal processes that follow. Allison has all the weapons a member of the public could have. She's informed, she's well connected, she's intelligent, she's respected, she's supported by an eminent newspaper in the Telegraph, and she's a member of the Free Speech Union. Allison has an arsenal at her disposal that the British people convicted of sharing memes or tweets during the Southport riots didn't have. but it's still terrifying. And that's the whole point. Allison's experience isn't unique. People have been carted off for interrogation and held in cells over similar accusations. This is in Britain, not in Russia or Iran. Like Allison is often a mother in a dressing gown. Marion Miller is a Scottish feminist who's critical of the Scottish government's gender ideology, which allows men to self-identify as women to gain access to female-only spaces. We've seen male rapists identify as women to get sent to female prisons, which isn't much of a punishment for a rapist. Marion was arrested in front of her terrified children and prosecuted after sharing a tweet of a suffragette ribbon, which was reported as transphobic because it could be perceived to be a noose, which is obviously insane. It's a suffragette ribbon. It's a symbol of women's rights. It's not a noose. I mean, if everything in the world is now a Rorschach test, which bad faith lunatics can perceive as hateful, where are we going to stop? Everything could be misinterpreted as offensive to someone, especially when that person is straining to get offended. Marion Miller's case was thankfully thrown out of court, but the process subjected Marion and her children to a huge amount of distress. The state was sending a message to other people who might oppose them or criticise them, saying, "We can come after you. Even if we know we can't prosecute you, we can arrest you, terrify your children, and smear your name." Journalist and feminist Julie Bindel said that she was also visited by police on a Sunday over an allegation of committing a hate crime over a message she had posted on X after a complaint from a transgender man in the Netherlands. Our police are now prioritising the hurty feelings of lumpy blokes in different countries above crimes committed in their actual jurisdiction. In the aftermath of the Southport massacre, where little girls were stabbed to death, the government released no information, leading to speculation on social media about the identity and motives of the attacker. As the attack had the hallmarks of Islamic terror, this is where many people's minds went. Bernie Spofforth, a mother from Cheshire, retweeted a post that misidentified the alleged attacker as a Muslim asylum seeker, adding the caveat, "if this is true." She deleted her tweet within an hour. Didn't matter. 6 police officers came to her house and arrested her in front of her children, took her away caged in a van, and then held her in a cell for 36 hours. The police told her that using the phrase asylum seeker was racist, which begs the question, against which race? Are the police saying that only black people claim asylum? That sounds pretty racist to me. Or is it an admission that the asylum system itself is racist as it discriminates against white people? But the police eventually had to admit they couldn't charge Bernie, although they charged and convicted plenty of other people who are less well equipped to fight back, such as Lee Dunn, a worker at Sellafield who shared memes so tame they'd get him kicked out of most WhatsApp groups for being a pussy. Basically, you don't want to be working class when you get nabbed by the police for this stuff. And actually, how wrong was Bernie? At the time, we were told that the attacker wasn't a Muslim asylum seeker at all, but a British Christian born in Wales. In fact, this British Christian was Axel Muganwa Rudakabana, whose parents had come from Rwanda in 2002. Had they claimed asylum? We don't know yet. Is he an Islamist? Well, he was in possession of Islamist training manuals, which aren't typically reading material for British Christians, and he was making the biological weapon ricin. Is he British? Well, it's interesting that he's the most unquestionably British person of all time, but white people in America and Australia are still colonisers on stolen land hundreds of years after their ancestors landed there. It's looking as if it's the government who should be prosecuted for sharing inflammatory misinformation and Christianophobic hate speech. Bernie was formerly a vocal activist, but the experience and the damage to her reputation and career chastened her. The threat of jail, the public humiliation, the physical presence of strong uniformed men on the doorstep, it's something that always works in silencing people. The process is the punishment, particularly when it's so opaque. The police didn't tell Allison which tweet or who accused her or what the next steps would be. It's the same tactics as communist secret police, the Stasi or the NKVD. Autocratic regimes have laws that are so vaguely worded that anyone could be perceived to have broken them, so the state can then pick and choose who has broken them. This imam calling for violence hasn't, but this woman's tweet has. So everyone lives in fear of these crimes because you never know when you'll get the knock on the door. In communist East Germany, an estimated 1 in 6 people worked for the Stasi secret police, informing on their colleagues and neighbours, but at least they were getting paid. In communist Britain, people are such pathetic little snitches, they grass each other up for free. Alexander Solzhenitsyn recounted how this happened in his autobiographical account of persecution in jail in the Soviet Soviet Union called Gulag Archipelago, the sharp nighttime ring, or the rude knock at the door, the insolent entrance of the unwiped jackboots of the unsleeping state security operatives, the frightened and cowed civilian witness at their backs. And what function does this civilian witness serve? The victim doesn't even dare think about it, and the operatives don't remember, but that's what the regulations call for, and so he has to sit there all night long and sign in the morning. For the witness, jerked from his bed, it is torture too, to go out at night after night to help arrest his own neighbours and acquaintances. Yeah, I'm reading that on my phone because I couldn't find the right page. As Allison explains, a visit from the police has a chilling effect on free speech, and that's exactly what non-crime hate incidents are designed to do, I think. Not just to shut down hate, whatever that is, but to make thinking outside the new approved public morality a dangerous activity. And what on earth are non-crime hate incidents? According to the police, non-crime hate incidents are offences motivated by hostility or prejudice towards people with a particular characteristic that do not meet the threshold of a criminal offence, whatever all that means. A core tenet of criminal law is that it should be hard to break accidentally and should be easy to understand. You can't accidentally murder someone or accidentally conduct a 9-month insurance fraud, but the conditions for issuing non-crime hate incidents are totally subjective and really vaguely defined, and they're taking over as a priority for the police. Police are chucking them around like P. Diddy chucks around baby oil. Hundreds of thousands have been issued with an average of 66 per day. When I reported that my car had been broken into and $2,000 worth of camera gear had been nicked, I phoned the police expecting them to send down men in Macintoshes and fedoras to dust for prints and take photos with one of those big cameras with a flash you hold and maybe actually try to catch the criminals. They openly scoffed at the idea that they might actually investigate this crime and just gave me a crime number for my insurance, which I don't have because I don't believe in insurance. It's basically gambling on bad luck. I wish I'd told them that the thieves had misgendered me as they ran away. Then they'd have scrambled all units. There's also an issue with non-crime hate incidents being issued against politicians who criticise the government. Scottish politician Murdo Fraser had a non-crime hate incident issued for a social media post when he pushed back against the Scottish government's gender ideology, saying choosing to identify as non-binary is as valid as choosing to identify as a cat. This was seen as a hate crime, even though it's actually a very generous comparison, as cats exist in real life, but non-binary is just a made-up thing for fat, ugly people. Although cats and non-binary people are similar in that they're both utterly self-centred and will make your curtains smell. Another Conservative politician was issued with a non-crime hate incident for questioning the government putting gypsy traveller sites in his community. He asked the question, would you like to see a traveller site next to your house? Which is discrimination against travellers apparently, because everyone should love to have them next to their house. But yeah, a politician being targeted by police for criticising a government ideology, this isn't the best omen for democracy. The state is also insanely punishing children with them. 2 schoolgirls were recorded as having committed non-crime hate incidents after saying one of their classmates smelt like fish. And Wiltshire police charged an 11-year-old schoolboy with a non-crime hate incident after he called another kid shorty and leprechaun. Oh, I feel so much safer knowing the police are terrifying the life out of school kids for being normal school kids. And Yorkshire police issued 4 schoolboys with non-crime hate incidents after they accidentally scuffed a Quran owned by one of the boys. The children were threatened with death by adult Muslims. It's interesting that the police didn't take any action to deal with the death threats against the children, but did punish the children for blasphemy. I swear I'm not making any of these up, by the way. I'll put links to all these reports on my Patreon. And in some ways, non-crime hate incidents are actually worse than being charged with a crime, as there's no opportunity to clear your name by proving your innocence in court. And while criminal offences are purged from your record after a certain amount of time, non-crime hate incidents stay there forever, showing up in background checks, and as HR departments are pretty much exclusively staffed by woke women, when they see one of these things on your record, you've got no chance of getting a job. And when the British government brings through Chinese-style social credit systems, you won't even be able to get a mortgage or pay your bills. You're just going to have to go and live in the woods and eat lichen and pine cones. Britain's current Labour government, who have never seen a bad idea they didn't like, are actually planning to increase the use of non-crime hate incidents. This is despite the Court of Appeal ruling that police officers should only record a non-crime hate incident if the incident is clearly motivated by intentional hostility and where there's a real risk of escalation causing significant harm or a criminal offence. Now, did Essex police really believe that Allison Pearson was about to leap from her balcony in her dressing gown, brandishing a samurai sword and screaming expletives? Was she cooking up ricin in her kitchen? Of course not. It's so weird that it's such a huge priority for the government. The chief of Essex Police listed hate speech alongside rape, knife crime and child abuse as one of the biggest threats to the community. Anyone who thinks that hearty words are as bad as child abuse needs to be sent to a re-education camp. But why are the police pursuing Allison with such zeal? Well, she's previously criticised Essex Police. Is this just retribution? She recounts how she might have got in Essex Police's bad books. Standing there on the doorstep, I suddenly thought of my friend who earlier this year had reported domestic violence, coercive control and fraud by their partner to the same Essex police force that this pair before me belonged to. The lackadaisical response from a constable assigned to the case was that A, it was a first offence, so the abusive person probably wouldn't get charged, so it's not worth bothering with it, and B, the prisons were full, so not worth bothering, and C, it was only my friend's word against their partner. I drafted an exocet missile of a response from my friend. It told the policeman concerned that he had a duty to investigate this serious crime and that there was abundant evidence from banks, credit card companies and family members. With some reluctance, the force eventually made an arrest after the constable whined in a letter to my friend about the excessive language I had used in the exocet, which I had targeted at his lazy rear end. So the police are on record complaining about Allison's harassment of them to do their jobs. They then turn up on her doorstep threatening her with vague punishments for undefined crimes. It just smells a bit fishy to me. Sorry, I know that saying things smell fishy is a hate crime now. In the same way as the persecution of opposition politicians under hate speech laws seems a little convenient for the government in its selection of targets. We need an investigation into Essex Police. What processes and communications led up to this decision? And if it is some capricious apparatchik exploiting our woolly hate speech laws for vengeance, well, they need to go and the laws need to go too. Although the left, who are now in power in Britain, obviously love it. They always have. In Mao's China, struggle sessions were violent public spectacles where people accused of being class enemies were publicly humiliated, accused, beaten and tortured, sometimes to death, often by their neighbours, friends and family. Well, the left-wing media in Britain were delighted to join in with Allison's struggle session. Writing in The Guardian, John Crace accused Allison of having lost her sense of humour. I'd say this was the pot calling the kettle black, but John Crace would probably think that was racist against kettles and phone Essex Police on me. Maybe Allison would have a better sense of humour right now if she wasn't facing 7 years in jail for a tame year-old tweet. The Guardian even said, some people might have wanted to keep quiet about being suspected of racism, a bit ashamed even, but not Pearson. They're literally chastising Allison for not playing along with their attempted public humiliation ritual, their Maoist struggle session. The Guardian article is very revealing of the left's attitude to freedom of speech. They seem to think it includes the right to defame, that racism can be easily defined, that police are well equipped to deal with nuanced speech crimes, and they also call for all tweets that offend someone to be investigated by police, which would require the entire society and economy of Britain to revolve around tweet policing and the jailing of most of us, which to be fair is probably what the Guardian want. Really what Allison is guilty of is transgressing against the dominant Western ideology of multiculturalism. She didn't follow the rules. The only acceptable response to terror attacks is to say, don't look back in anger, it's the religion of peace. Complaining about it is far right. If we do anything to stop terror attacks happening, then we're letting the terrorists win. You fight terror with love. Personally, I think we defeat ISIS with bombs, not love. When we sent a bunch of schoolgirls over to love them, they seem to like it. Hate crime laws and non-crime hate incidents are essentially blasphemy laws, ensuring everyone pays lip service to state ideology. British police won't do anything to stop you getting stabbed, but if you post on social media that you don't like getting stabbed, they arrest you for hate speech. I trust the British criminal justice system about as much as I trust a gin and tonic made by P. Diddy to not make me wake up with a bum that's oily and sore. The criminal justice system is now another tool of the state. For the last few decades, the conventional thinking has been that as China gets richer, its middle class will demand rights, and China will naturally gravitate towards a Western-style democracy. In fact, the opposite is happening. Western citizens don't want to be free, because that's scary. They're falling for communist promises of safety from hearty words. The state is not benign. The state is a parasite. As the state gets bigger, it awards itself more power, more intrusion into your life. It's never ended well, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn says in the Gulag Archipelago, and how we burned in the camps later thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative when he went out at night night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had to say goodbye to his family, or if during periods of mass arrests, as for example in Leningrad when they arrested a quarter of the entire city, people had not simply sat there in their lairs, paling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase, but had understood that they had nothing left to lose and had boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else was at hand. The organs, that means the state apparatchiks are arresting people, would very quickly have suffered a shortage of officers and transport, and notwithstanding all of Stalin's thirst, the cursed machine would have ground to a halt if we didn't love freedom enough, and even more, we had no awareness of the real situation. We purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterwards. Yeah, I'm still reading it off my phone. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, and you can buy me half a pint of beer on the link below. And if you want to support me making these videos and get exclusive content and be part of a nice community of the only sane people left in the West, then you can sign up to my Patreon. There's a link below. Okay, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye-bye.